What's going on, everybody? Welcome back in for another episode of Hype to Clean. If you're watching this video, a lot of you are probably thinking, well, look who decided to finally show up. Yeah, I know it's been about 18-19 months between videos. In that time, a couple of major life changes have gone on, super positive life changes. First one is I got a promotion in my job and my career, and so most of you I think know I was an assistant band director at a high school here in town. I am now the director of bands at Louis D. Brandeis High School here in San Antonio, and so that's been going really well. Worked with a super solid team, looking to push the program into the extremely competitive field here in Texas. And about 5 months into that new job, my wife and I had our first child. So needless to say, he's about a year old now. Things have finally started to settle down, getting a little bit of a groove with that as well, getting a little groove with the gig. And so I had a week off for Thanksgiving and decided that I was finally gonna cut up some footage that I have had for too long. I've been sitting on too long to try to produce something and get it out to you guys. So I wanna say thank you first and foremost to all of you guys that have been sending supportive messages, comments, DMs through the Instagram, you know, those things, those messages of you guys asking for more content. It's just really motivating, really inspiring. So thanks for being so patient. And then I also have to apologize to Jeff Ausdemore because this footage was taken about 1.5 years ago, and he was probably thinking at this point that it was never going to be released. But I wanted to still get it out there and hopefully get in a little groove as well with videos and getting more content out to you guys. So this is the Jeff Ausdemore video. We sat down at TMEA 2018, which was February of last year, asked him some things regarding his story, things about drum corps auditions, what he looked for when he was caption head over at Blue Knights. Being an educator, I think a lot of us are interested in either studying music or we've already studied music, we're teachers, and so we want to kind of get an idea of what he did when he was over at Colleyville, and just some fun questions as well towards the end. So check it out. Jeff, again, thank you so much for sitting down. I appreciate you so much for being patient. I hope this is not too little too late, but hope you enjoy how this came out. It was certainly a great time sitting with you. So thanks again to everyone for being so patient. Hope you enjoy this awesome Jeff Ausdemore interview. Okay. Yeah. So first and foremost, Jeff, thanks so much for willing to do this.
Oh, absolutely.
I know you're here busy with the convention and all, but
sure.
I appreciate it. So let's talk a little bit about you first. How did you get started playing? What's your background? I know you've been a touring drum set player, which is awesome. So can you tell me a little bit about that?
Sure. As I like to tell people, I have a very eclectic background. Usually I say I'm a musical mutt in that respect. So my earliest musical memories are learning the piano. So my mother is very musically gifted, her whole side of the family. So piano lessons from an early age. And so I just really thought that I might be a pianist. And so I enjoyed the piano and the aspects that brought to me. I went to parochial school. So I didn't really have the band experience until 6th grade. I made the choice to transfer, my family and I made the choice to transfer to public school in 7th grade. So in 6th grade parochial school, I took a bus to become a member of the band.
Nice.
So 7th grade I was actually officially in the band, but I tried percussion in 6th grade, and I was naturally inclined to be a percussionist. I wouldn't say that I was gifted. I would just say that I enjoyed it and I wanted to be better.
Yeah.
So the keyboard aspect of it came natural to me, obviously because of the keyboard background, the piano keyboard background, but enjoyed it. And my first middle school band director was a drummer, and so it was fun watching him play drum set in the middle school band hall, and so I enjoyed that aspect of it. When I got into high school, then I realized that this is becoming a little bit more serious, and I'm the type of person that I really love to shore up my weaknesses as much as possible.
Yeah.
So one of my strengths was keyboard, so I enjoyed that, and I kept kind of that plate spinning, if you will.
Sure.
But a plate that was not spinning was my hands, and so I realized about my freshman, sophomore year or so that I really wanted to get my hands in shape, and so really long story short, I had another colleague of mine that was not really the strongest player in middle school, but after one summer he came back, and I'll never forget, he set a little stereo system and pressed play on a tape and then played along with some musical material, and the vocabulary he was using I didn't recognize. Looking back, it was probably some really fast rolls and flam taps,
sure,
and Swisses, and it kind of blew my mind. And he said, the best part, Jeff, hold out your hand. And I said, okay. So I held out my hand, and he played a roll on my hand. And I said, at that point, whatever you did, I want to experience it.
Yeah.
And so that was drum and bugle corps for me. And so that was sophomore year. So I marched in a drum and bugle corps in Saginaw, Texas, called Northern Aurora, and met some really, really fundamental, life-changing people in my life. Joe Kersey, Rich Hogan, Wayne Bovenchin, so many people in that organization that just helped kind of shape who I would later be from a rudimental standpoint, and enjoyed getting my hands together. And so I felt like that was really good. And again, I'm just trying to constantly try to improve whatever I had weaknesses in my musical tool bag.
Right.
So I did that, enjoyed it, and then I got a taste of drum corps. And I kind of looked to see if there might be another opportunity, and so I marched in the Cavaliers that senior year in high school, and again, I enjoyed it. Just a very different experience from Northern Aurora, and the whole time I really, really enjoyed still playing my high school band program. My high school band director was Michael Kaufman, and Mr. Kaufman programmed the most incredible music. So we were playing Hindemith and Holst, and I mean, just all of the Warhorse pieces.
Sure.
And our marching band was not competitive. It was it was just maybe, you know, like a one show a week type of thing, where you might play Hey Baby on the ride cymbal, and then you play your festival and get your one at the end of it, which was fine. But as I was getting my hands in shape, I wanted a more intense outlet, to compete. But what I really appreciated, certainly once I got out and was removed from my high school experience, was the fact that getting up and having early morning sectionals at 6:30, 7 a.m. before school every morning, and working on From a Dark Millennium and Schwantner and Ross Lee Finney and all these intense composers. He was really putting us through our paces in terms of this incredible literature. So I had a deep affinity for these pieces, and I'm getting fed all this incredible literature in high school, and then I felt like I was getting my hands developed outside of that experience in drum corps. So fast forward outside, and so I go to Michigan State University. Michigan State University back then was run by a gentleman by the name of Mark Johnson. And Mark Johnson is a phenomenal timpanist, and he was the principal timpanist for the Santa Fe Opera. He and Mike Udow were playing in the Santa Fe Opera. So Mike Udow was the principal percussionist, and my teacher, Mark Johnson, was the principal timpanist.
Okay.
So I learned a lot from Mark Johnson, but Michigan State's percussion program is not what it is today. Michigan State's percussion program back then was relatively small, and there were talented individuals, but the environment was not really progressive.
Okay.
So I felt like I needed a change, and I had been hearing about the University of North Texas for some time. So I transferred to the University of North Texas, and was able to study with all the greats that we all know, the Bob Chitromas and of the world, and of course Paul Rennick, and that experience really set me on a completely different course in my life. So
did you march the line at North Texas?
I did.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
What years?
So I arrived in the spring of 1992. So I marched in 1992, did that, and that was a very talented drum line.
Yeah.
And, we had a good time. We got into a little bit of trouble at a little football game down at the University of Texas, so we weren't able to go to PASIC.
Was that the
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that thing with the, well, no, maybe that was before. What is it? Poison. Was that it? The liquor.
That happened as well.
Okay.
That happened a lot, actually. There was a really. I don't know how much we can.
No, we don't have to. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. Yeah.
But there was an incident at halftime at the University of Texas, so we were banned from going to PASIC in 1992. So very talented drum line, but I enjoyed that experience, and then we ended up going to PASIC in 1993. So I marched again in 1993. At that time, I had really kind of taken some time off of drum corps. And so between 1989, when I marched Cavaliers, I had, I guess, 4 more years to march. And so that would have been my age out year in 1993. I ended up teaching some. So I taught limited edition, and I taught Northern Aurora a little bit. And then I went back my age out year, and I taught the Phantom Regiment. And so in 1993, I taught the Phantom Regiment with Jeff Prospery, and had a great time. Very talented drum line, and some great students. So in the interim, I was still playing with orchestras. I was playing with wind ensembles at North Texas and orchestras and regional orchestras, and I love that part of my musical life.
Right.
So at that point, everything was on track. I felt like everything was solidifying. I had this phenomenal experience at the University of North Texas, drumline and percussion ensemble and the wind ensemble. And I was enjoying all these great things about the University of North Texas. And my drum corps so-called career was going well. I really enjoyed teaching at that level. And then I got a call from some bandmates. I had recorded a couple albums from a couple different bands when I was living in Michigan when I was younger. I was in high school. One of them kind of caught fire and got signed to a record label and was going on tour for their second record. And so they asked me to run out to Target and buy their record, and if I liked it, to call them back and audition. So I'll never forget this. I went to Target, bought the record, popped it into my car, CD player, and listened, and I just loved the harmony and the songwriting. So I ended up calling them back and having a very candid conversation with their management on the phone in a conference call. And they said, if you fly here to audition, I think you'll stand a very good chance of winning the job. So I ended up speaking to my parents, and I talked to my teachers at North Texas, and long story short, I ended up doing that. So I left the University of North Texas. I won the job. I moved to Nashville, and that was 1995. And so I ended up signing to Benson Records, and the band was called Nouveau. We went on tour all through Asia, North America, and the band had some pretty nice commercial success. I think they had 3 or 4 #1 singles in the contemporary Christian music industry. So
awesome.
That was fun to get radio support all around the world. So I was able to play drum set there, and while I was in Nashville, I did some studio work. So as you can imagine, a lot of country music, a lot of contemporary Christian music. Actually did 2 or 3 hard rock and like metal records, you know.
Nice.
So I had a taste of everything.
Yeah.
So I had a great time, and then when that ended, we ended up getting out of our contract, and I needed to finish my undergraduate. So in 1999, I was already living in Nashville, kind of making a nice name for myself in the studio scene, and so I figured, well, I'm already here, I'll just finish up my undergraduate here. So I finished my undergraduate at Belmont University.
Okay.
And I had a great experience there, and then immediately went to graduate school and wanted to find an Eastman type of education.
Right.
So I looked at Eastman, looked at a bunch of different schools, narrowed it down. I found a phenomenal teacher by the name of Dr. Fred Bugbee. Fred got his master's and his doctorate from Eastman. So I went and studied with Fred at New Mexico State University.
Okay.
And so while I was at New Mexico State University, Fred gave me a lot of freedom to help teach the drum line, some of the students privately, and I just completely took another shift.
Sure.
And Fred is a contemporary music scholar and genius, and so I learned so much from his bias as a musician, and it was so different from my background that I felt like I was every day was just a completely new learning experience, and it just stretched me in a way I'd never been stretched. And I can't say enough about his teaching. He's a phenomenal teacher, great musician as well. So when that ended, I ended up getting my first job. So I ended up I graduated in 2001, and I got the job for the University of Texas at Arlington.
Okay.
So I was the arranger and director for the percussion program there in the marching band, and co-directing the marching band with Phil Clements. Phil is a fantastic organizer and musician, and ran that marching band beautifully. So that was a fun experience getting there, and then working with Michael Varner. Dr. Varner had been at University of Texas Arlington for many years. He just stepped down and gave it to Andy Eldridge just a couple years ago, and had built that studio up. So I had a great time working with those students, and I did that for a couple of years, and then the Colleyville Heritage job opened up, and then I took that in 2004. So
that's awesome.
That's kind of a big, broad survey, and that lasted for 12 years into the position that I have now.
Right. Well, I think that completely speaks to the fact of how well-rounded you are, and how much importance you put on that, because I think that's something that especially as a spectator, seeing how well Colleyville did when you were there, in all the aspects, like whether it's percussion ensemble or the marching thing, and learning a completely secondary show for the marching thing, which is completely crazy. But they played well, obviously.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
They absolutely played well. So let's talk a little bit about that, because I have some educators in the audience that we're always trying, like myself, we're trying to get our kids to that next level. And so what do you feel was most important in that aspect of, I know you taught the 6th graders all the way to 12th grade, so what do you feel was the most important thing to get them ready to accomplish those goals?
Sure. I think that whenever you look at something from an overall perspective of what is going to be successful, I think the most important aspect of looking at that will always be relationships. So the relationships that we, not just myself, but all the percussion faculty and band directors at Colleyville, all built our information on was this pillar of trust.
Okay.
And I think sincerity goes hand in hand with trust.
Yeah.
And so I think all of the technical, all the mechanical, all the musical information that you can give to a kid, to a student, is completely lost if it's built on an insincere relationship,
Sure.
or if there's no trust. So one of the things that I don't think adults really give students enough credit for is being intellectually sincere. And by that I mean, if I have a fundamental relationship with a student and they believe that I care about them,
Sure.
then they're going to be 100% more susceptible to taking in the information I'm about to give them.
Right.
So I could have the best information in the world, the absolute best information. I could bring in experts in all the Michael Burrick to play marimba, Jeff Queen how to play snare drum, Ed Steffen to play timpani, so on and so forth. But if a kid is not open to the sincerity of that relationship and it's
Right.
not reciprocal, then it's lost. It's completely lost.
Sure.
So
they don't even hear it.
They don't even hear it.
Right.
So number one priority for us was to build genuine relationships.
Yeah.
And so when I stepped into that program, it was really interesting. The percussion director prior to me is a gentleman named Chris Hayes. And Chris Hayes had built Colleyville up in a way that was very successful, but it was his culture. So
I gotcha.
he had his stamp, his personality,
Yeah.
the way the kids talked, the way the kids thought about things was very, very myopically focused in the way that he saw things. And so when I stepped in, I recognized that and went, all right, so these are all the things that you guys do well. These are some things that maybe I perhaps disagree with, or I'd like to maybe go this direction.
Yeah.
So I did that over time, right? It's the whole
Right.
It's the whole thing of a band director. When a band director or percussion director takes over a new program, there are essentially two ways to steer the ship. You can either take the wheel and you can yank on the rudder,
Right.
And some people fall off, and parents,
Right,
pitchfork.
sure.
Or you can just gradually, slowly, hand over hand change it. Well, I chose that.
Right.
I chose to very gently do that, and that gave me time to build those relationships.
Sure.
So, to get back to your original question, so I made sure that number one, kids trusted me. And so by going into a program that was already successful, I wanted them to know that I respected what they had done to that point.
Mm-hmm.
I respect their effort, because they don't have to be in band.
Right.
They don't have to show up. They don't have to work hard. So
Right.
I appreciate the effort, number one. So that kind of comes back into one of our philosophies at Colleyville, and quite honestly any of my students, and that is always respect and appreciate your effort, but never be satisfied. And that's a very clear delineation of
Right.
the two. And I think sometimes people conflate one with the other,
Right.
and we get into trouble. It's okay to have a lot of healthy self-esteem and be proud of how hard you worked, and it's still okay to strive for something greater in the next day.
Yeah.
So everything was built on the pillar of trust and sincere relationships. After that, my bias as a performer, to your point, came through. I wanted kids to be able to say, if I get to my senior year from Colleyville and then I go into engineering or medicine or pharmaceutical sales or quickie mart cashiers or owning a farm or
Right.
whatever it was, whatever spoke to them in life, I wanted them to enjoy an enriched musical experience.
Right.
I didn't really want, and I wouldn't feel good about a student coming up to the program and being a phenomenal marimba player, but really didn't have any experience trying rudimental snare drum.
Sure.
Or the opposite. This kid was an incredible quad drummer, but had no experience trying Burton grip or didn't know how to improvise in a blues progression.
Yeah.
And I wanted them to feel the power. I'm getting a chill just saying this. The power of like hearing a Beethoven symphony play and you getting to play timpani.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure.
And those types of things, or playing a very delicate triangle note, you know, in a Mozart piece. So
every note is important.
Every note.
Every note is important. Yeah.
So my bias as a teacher shined through, and I just wanted them to be equally at least exposed to everything.
Yeah.
And what I found, Daniel, this is so interesting. Over the years, people started thinking of Colleyville as either a strong drum line or maybe a strong percussion ensemble school. But to this day, people are shocked when I say that the number one thing that we did better than anything else, all those kids at Colleyville were incredible keyboard players. Incredible.
Nice.
And so that's what I'm most proud of.
Yeah.
Is they loved playing keyboard.
Well, that's the thing that I think, you know, when I get freshmen in the high school, it's like, okay, who likes playing keyboard? And then you have like one or two hands go up, and everybody else is like, I'm not playing keyboard.
Right.
But, and I think that's, like you said, that's always a thing that is like, because I think it takes the longest to become proficient at.
Yes, sir.
And you really have to go through those struggles where you're just not very good for a while.
100%.
You know, and there's going to be a wall.
Yes.
And so you just got to slowly chip away at it.
Yes.
And so you went on and you were the caption head over at the Blue Knights.
Yes, sir.
And so a lot of people want to know that I get this question a ton. It's like, oh, can you talk about, you know, drum corps auditions and things like that?
Yes,
and I think there's a little bit too much pressure put on in their minds what the audition is going to be like. But can you talk about the things you noticed from the people who you said, yeah, you're going to be with us?
Yes.
What are some of the things, other than being a good player, what are some of the things that you saw in them as people that you figured, okay, let's give them a contract?
I think that's a fantastic question, Daniel. The number one thing that we looked at in terms of accepting a member into the Blue Knights, and I can tell you that this is fairly common in all the upper groups that I know of. So all the other caption heads that are tasked with making very difficult decisions.
Sure.
So if you look at all the caption heads from all the drum corps, from Tom Unks and Mike McIntosh and Jim Casella when he was with Santa Clara and Cavaliers and so on and so forth, they all have just incredible players show up. To your point, yeah, so there's mechanical considerations. Yes, you have to be prepared and be ready to go musically. But the number one thing that we look for, and again, I don't think this is unique to us, was we looked for somebody that was completely teachable. Somebody whose mindset was open to improvement.
Sure.
So
coachable.
Very coachable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think, again, you know, the teacher bias comes through again because my personal life, I'm very, very hungry for improvement in my life. So
right.
I'm a constant reader, and I'm always looking to learn in a personal way about whatever it is. And so I want my students to have that same hunger, because if that relationship is right, then there's really no stopping the student.
Right.
And so it sounds cliche, but it's true. There would be flam drag fighter pilots that come in and they could play 100 times faster than me in terms of singles or rolls or crazy vocabulary, and it's impressive to watch. But then the attitude by which they bring into the ensemble, if it doesn't match, if it's not a good familial match, if it's not consistent with where we want to be as an ensemble, then it becomes...
Sure. Yeah, because it's a pushback. It's like, hey, I think you were out there. Oh, it wasn't me. Okay, you know?
Yeah, that didn't go over well.
Right, yeah. Okay.
And then, of course, the kids showing up camp to camp to camp that were better.
Right.
So one of the things I learned from a long, long time ago from Murray Gussick, and other Jim Casella related news, Murray Gussick, another brilliant guy. Years and years ago, I remember him telling me that he didn't always take the students with the strongest hands.
Right.
He wanted the students with the best sense of rhythm and understanding of rhythm, because in drum corps, we play a lot.
Sure.
Right? So their hands are going to get strong by the end of the summer.
Yeah, it's inevitable.
Yeah. So in terms of understanding the relationships between the notes and negotiating space, that's the real key that it's a little harder to teach.
Right.
And students will get there, but right off the bat, if students have a good understanding of space between the notes and understanding rhythmic relationships, the chops will come.
Sure. So what is the biggest difference, because you were, all the way deep in the high school and the middle school thing,
Sure.
and doing the drum corps thing at the same time.
Sure.
So what are some of the, let's say for the high school kids, the maturation things that you think they need to have when they're thinking about making that jump, going to a camp,
Sure.
even if it's just to experience it, but what do you think from a maturation standpoint
Yes.
they need?
I would say the number one thing is to be more critical of their sound and the details that they are playing, instead of the cosmetic or aesthetic considerations.
Sure.
There's a lot, and this is not a put down in terms of anyone's particular teaching, but there is a lot of emphasis on the height system. There's a lot of emphasis on 1 inch versus 17 inches versus 9 inches and that kind of a thing. And I think that the truly amazing ensembles, Kronos Quartet, Santa Clara Vanguard, bass line, I mean, it doesn't matter. Any genre, any orchestra, drum line, percussion ensemble, wind ensemble, those groups are the ones that understand how incredibly characteristic their sounds need to be for that ensemble to be mature.
Right.
So that all starts with the individual, right? So if you listen to the resonance of your stick or your mallet when you're playing 8 on a hand, or bucks, or flam accents. One of the things, I was just chatting with a colleague of mine the other day, one of my consulting clients, and I liken flam, for instance, here's a great example. Flams. When you're playing on a keyboard instrument, and I have some, and you can hear if I miss a note. So that's a big deal. You're trying to be accurate. So the quality of sound notwithstanding, if you miss a note, you can hear it. If I just play flam accents really, really quickly, I can appreciate maybe the difference of the accent and the non-accents.
Yeah.
But let's say I popped 2 of those flams. To me, that's a wrong note.
Yep.
So the detail by which you listen for not only the consistency of the flam, but the quality of the flam, the distance between grace and primary, thick, thin, and how they relate to one another, the context by which the accent sits in the non-accents, that detail, I think, is the number one thing that younger players, as they're striving to make a great ensemble, should pay more attention to, because the Paul Rennicks of the world, the Mike McIntosh, the Mike Jacksons of the world, Tom Unks, so on and so forth, these great teachers and caption heads, when they have all these people coming to audition, they are really critically listening for, is this student listening for the deepest level of sound production possible? If it's non-accents or just little taps, it's adding a flam or a molar stroke here or there, are they really going for the absolute fullest, most resonant characteristic sound? Because yes, a lot of kids are going to come in, they're going to be able to play really fast, but at the end of the summer, they want kids that are committed to sound quality first.
I feel like there's not a shortage of hands, but there is a shortage of ears.
Oh, that's a great way to say it.
And so
Great way to say it.
I tell my students, I will tell them, like, I think sometimes they get fooled into thinking that music is a visual thing. And while it can be, primarily it's how it sounds, right? And so you can be a great individual player, but if you can't sit in a group of people, and like you said, not only have that chemistry, because Jim actually just said that too, he wants to have people that are going to make good chemistry.
Yes, sir.
But both on a playing level and a social level.
Right.
I mean, you're spending so much time together.
Right.
So, and okay, let's talk about your stick. Because that has been blowing up. There's a lot of people who love the stick. It's a great stick. It's super heavy, which I like. I like weighted sticks. And so, can we talk a little bit about the relationship with ProMark and how that all came about?
Yeah, I've been with ProMark since probably 1999 or so, when I first got to graduate school, and I just believed in everything they stood for. They put everything into education. They stood by me, supported me any way they could. They believed in me when I really hadn't accomplished anything, but they believed what I was trying to get out there. In graduate school, some of the things that I wrote for my students were pretty crazy, pretty adventurous, should we say. So if you're a graduate of New Mexico State, anywhere from 1999 to 2001, I apologize. We had such a great time. Just rhythms inside of rhythms, and dissecting polyrhythms, and physiological studies that were kind of counterintuitive to what everyone kind of normally just does.
Sure.
We explored kind of kind of the antithesis of all those things from a touch standpoint, and we just did all kinds of crazy listening exercises, and so I really kind of used those 3 years as a laboratory.
Yeah.
And so ProMark saw what I was doing, and this is in New Mexico, and I tried to get out around the state and meet students and share these crazy concepts that would later show up in the Blue Knights arrangements from 2004 to 2010. And so my point being that ProMark saw that, and they saw the potential of me not just being crazy, but in taking musical risks, but having it pay off. There was a reason I was doing those things. So fast forward to 2000, I'm just gonna say, goodness, 2005, 6, somewhere in that range, we started talking about the idea of a stick. And so I'm very, very fortunate. I consider my personal life, my professional life, I'm very fortunate, very blessed in that when the opportunity to talk about designing a stick came, I had the perfect laboratory by which to get feedback from different age students, different levels of students.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take the engineer at ProMark at the time, and I were able to take the concept of this is what I'm thinking, this is what I would love for it to sound like, this is what I would love for it to feel like, and we were able to take, let's say, 5 or 8 models at a time. He would throw it on a lathe, bring it back, we'd go back into the office and drum through it. This feels great. What could we do to make this feel better, and so on and so forth. And we would get, again, a half a dozen models, and then I would take them all, we would label them, and then I would take them to Colleyville. And the indoor sticks, the smaller sticks, I would pass out to my 7th and 8th graders to see how that felt. And then I would take the outdoor sticks and give them to my high school students, get their feedback. Then I would take them up to the Blue Knights, and I would take them up to the Blue Knights, because these are all college kids from all over.
So you got the full spectrum then.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that's great.
So I was able to listen very carefully to these kids saying, it sounds like this, in my hands it feels like this, I would like for it to be able to do this. So I would write that down, I would take all that feedback, I would go back to ProMark, and they were so patient with me. I think I probably set a record for the most time ever to design a stick. I don't know how many months or years it took, but we were just really picky.
Yeah.
And I just wanted it to sound a certain way, and I wanted it to feel a certain way. D'Addario comes along and takes over ProMark and have infused a qualitative aspect of that company that has been phenomenal. So Kyle Thomas, Jim Bailey, everyone at D'Addario has come in and just lovingly taken that company and just boosted it in quality, in vision, and I'm just very, very proud and fortunate to be associated with those gentlemen in that company. So yeah, very proud of the stick.
That's awesome. Yeah, and people love it. All right, so you're fully immersed in judging.
Yes, sir.
Right, you're judging DCI. You're now going to do your first full season of WGI.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so as far as the drum corps aspect goes, the activity, where do you see that going? Like, what's coming next on the drum corps level? What do you think?
Ooh, that's a really, really great question. Fortunately, those decisions are in the hands of the folks that have a vested interest in making Drum Corps International relevant and healthy for performers and audience members alike. My personal opinion is that it's going to continue morphing into general entertainment. And by that I mean this. I like to use the analogy of, if I brought my father to a drum corps show in 1989, when I marched and when he would come see my shows, he is not a musician. He knows what he likes, appreciates what he likes, and so he would probably sit there in 1989 and appreciate things and enjoy everything that's going on, but he would recognize it as a very, very pure form of what that genre truly is, as its own vehicle to entertain you. However, if I brought my dad to Drum Corps International in the summer of 2018 and he saw someone like the Blue Coats or a number of groups that are really kind of breaking out into more of something that you might even feel like you might be at a Cirque du Soleil show. Or you're at a show where Blue Man Group might try to pull something off you might see in a drum corps show now. I think the general audience of drum corps is being expanded because I think those design choices are starting to bring people in that maybe wouldn't have been brought into, yeah, that's a really good marching band with silly hats. Boy, it is loud though. Good for you guys. Back in the 70s, 80s.
I got you.
But I think what designers and performers are bringing to drum corps these days is so much more in line with what I would just consider general contemporary entertainment.
Okay.
If I'm going to pay $50 to see Cirque du Soleil or Blue Man Group or what have you, I'm going to be entertained because they're kind of affecting all of my senses in a certain way, right? Designed by A or B. And now when I go to a drum corps show in 2018, it's much more aligned with how am I being affected through the senses in a similar fashion than it was through the tradition of military bands and how that came up through drum corps in the, again, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Do you think that, I don't want to say it takes away because I still think it's important, but it seems to me, at least just as an observer, that the reason like the top 5 are what they are is because the achievement is still there while raising the visual stuff.
Yes, sir.
And I think it's easy to get away from thinking, okay, well, we can let the playing go a little bit, and let's just make it, you know, entertaining. And that's not the case, I think, for the absolute best, right?
No, sir.
Okay.
In fact, I would say just the opposite. I would say that when I was a performing member, the top 5 and 8 were very, very strong. And then once you got to the bottom of the top 12 and certainly outside the top 12, the students were really trying hard and doing a good job, but the excellence was maybe not what it was in the top 6 or 8 or what have you. In 2018, you can go all day and hear excellence. It's just shades of variation that separate number 2 from number 4, or number 5 from number 9, or number 6 from number 14. Because you can, honest to goodness, in 2018, you can listen to a 14th place drum line in DCI, and they would have won in 1986. Or something. Obviously, I'm being
right. You're sort of, no.
But goodness gracious,
that makes sense.
The level of performer has not suffered at all in terms of execution and excellence, and I think that is not to forecast or project maybe what we're going to talk about in WGI next, but I think most of that has come through 2 mediums. Number one, WGI has been completely innovating what's possible in the drum corps realm, and so on and so forth. Drum corps will respond. Back in the, let's say, 80s and 90s, WGI performers would try this, and they would execute maybe here. Drum corps would kind of maybe assimilate that thing, those ideas, and then execute really well. Maybe not attempt as much. And then WGI would try this and maybe only execute here. Well, now WGI groups and drum corps groups are sharing those same performers, and the excellence is elevating both. So you have the design influence of WGI into drum corps, and maybe a little bit reciprocated that way, but you have these shared performers, Broken City kids into the Blue Knights, RCC into the Blue Devils, and it happens in the Midwest with Rhythm X. And
there's no off season.
There's no off season for these kids.
Not anymore.
So they're influencing and really shaping the excellence. So if anything, excellence has just gone through the roof.
All right.
Yeah.
So you're excited about the WGI thing this year?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
It'll be, like you said, I think that they have both been influencing each other, but it feels like over the years WGI is really making its mark on what's going on with the design.
Yes, sir.
All right. From the activity, what obstacles, or do you think there are obstacles, or what's missing from the activity, if anything?
WGI and DCI?
Just the activity of percussion or marching band or WGI, DCI, any of that. What do you think is
any of the marching percussion related things?
Right.
I don't know that anything is missing in its purest form.
Okay.
I think that in the hands of maybe a younger instructor, things could be missing. Okay. But I don't know that that's necessarily the fault of the genre. Just like if I wanted to go, march in this activity, if it's in the WGI season or the drum corps season or my high school marching band, if it's done from a healthy perspective, there's nothing missing. So if I'm hitting the drum, or if I'm playing this keyboard instrument with a really educated touch and a characteristic sound, then nothing is missing. However, younger instructors that may be a little short-sighted might be cheating a student if they're not giving them the full experience, and they are isolating this is marching percussion, this is how I strike a snare drum,
Right.
this has nothing to do with how I'm going to play Scheherazade over here, then I think that might be selling the performer short.
Okay.
And I think they're missing, a younger instructor might be missing the opportunity to see the similarity
Right.
in musicianship
Right.
as percussionists can display.
Yeah. I think that there's not enough weight put on how you can become a better rudimental drummer if you can play timpani and marimba
Sir.
and drum set. Like, it's
Yes,
all intertwined.
I couldn't
It
agree
is.
more.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
All right, got some quick fire questions for
Okay.
you. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. Favorite kind of music or favorite artist?
Wow. Okay, favorite kind of music, this is, just full disclosure, this will be a cop-out.
All right.
Okay, so will depend on my mood. So Bartok, depending on what kind of focused mood I'm in, all the way to Michael Giacchino, to anything in between. I am a huge sucker for singer-songwriters, so the simplicity, and this is probably my Nashville bias coming through, the simplicity of being able to say so much with a guitar and playing a few brilliantly placed chords is the most beautiful thing in the world, as is Bruckner, as is Brahms or Wagner, you know, in the middle of his ring, just the complexity of what they were able to accomplish. So I think for me, it's part of the human existence is really recognizing what speaks to you.
Yeah.
And for me, because I tend to be kind of complex in my personal life, different things will speak to me at different times. So I can be moved equally by listening to a Beethoven sonata or a concerto or a new episode on the hit series Nashville, when they're at a club and there's a new singer-songwriter playing something with a guitar. So Gary Burton to Bruckner, I mean, again, cop out, I know, but my favorite kind of music will literally hinge on what I'm inspired to do next or what I'm in the mood for currently. As far as artists go, oh my goodness gracious. Drum set, two come to mind always. Manu Katché and Vinnie Colaiuta.
Yeah, standard.
Standard, everybody's favorite too, probably, right? So, and in terms of other artists, classical percussionists, gosh, so many amazing players in the world today. A friend of mine, Ed Steffen, is one of the most clearly speaking percussionists I've heard live. As I was fortunate to teach with Ed for a brief period of time before he won the Dallas job and went off to Pittsburgh and now I believe San Francisco. He's got a very clear sound in that realm. I don't know if there's any particular genre you want me to speak about.
Just for whatever you like.
Rubinstein. So I mean, depending on which genre we're talking about, I have probably 50 people that I try to rotate and listen to.
Sure.
I try not to get too far from my listening influences.
Yeah.
So yesterday I was listening to probably 4 different pianists and going through the Rachmaninoff second piano concerto, for instance.
That's awesome. All right, iPhone or Android?
My iPhone is sitting over there.
Okay. Matched or traditional?
Both.
Stevens or cross grip?
Both.
Content or achievement?
Oh, goodness. Oh my gosh, remember, all of my DCI and WGI supervisors are listening. I have to be careful. Yes. I know it's a cop-out.
That's all right.
If my bias coming into the state of Texas and how well music education is formulated in the state of Texas, the lens is always through achievement. But I'm going to say content.
Okay.
You know, if you push me on it, you know, what's more important in terms of vocabulary or the essence of excellence, I'm going to say vocabulary content.
Well, I think that's what makes it fun, right?
Yeah,
we all have our own things.
Exactly.
Jeff, thank you again.
My pleasure,
Had a great
Daniel.
time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.